Hey, hello everyone. So, this video I'm making primarily for kids who are reading biology, and the primary goal of the kids is to pass exams. But I wanted to always, look at science and the knowledge that human beings have acquired in the name of science, mathematics, etc. More like a story than like a subject to be, to be memorized or to be understood just to pass exams. So this I'm going to just read out a chapter from this wonderful book called The Song of the Cell, written by Dr Siddhartha Mukherjee. And it is about the journey of knowledge, or how basically biology, the whole science of biology, got unfolded, how people discovered there's so many things that the kind of facts that are offloaded onto you in biology textbooks, right? There are so many facts after facts after facts that you have to memorize, but where did they come from? Have you ever wondered? So this actual story of discovery of those facts is very interesting. I have not got the time to do a deep research, so all credit to Dr. Siddhartha Mukherjee. I'm just going to read out the passage from his book, and hopefully you'll find it interesting, because I found it very interesting. People around me who were just listening to me read, they found it interesting. So I just thought I'll put it out into the world, and let's see if there are enough people to find it interesting. I can take this experiment forward of uncovering interesting stories from the history of science. Okay, so this chapter from the Song of the Cell, the book Song of the Cell, is called the Guardian Cell. Guardian means, of course, somebody who guards, security guard, military, police. So the Guardian cell in the blood is basically white blood cells. So this is a story about that. So this chapter starts with a slightly sad incident. In 1736, the year 1736, which is approximately 300 years from now, before now, I lost one of my sons, a fine boy of 4 years old. That's so sad. By smallpox. It was smallpox, like chickenpox. I don't know if you kids ever had chickenpox. I had chickenpox when I was small. You get little, these water-filled pockets, like not pockets, water-filled boils on your body. It's very, very yucky. You get fever, this, that. So smallpox is a much more dangerous variant of that, and fortunately, smallpox is eradicated. I believe even chickenpox is now eradicated because of advances in the field of biology. Okay, long story short. So the poor person, who will know about who he is, lost his son to smallpox. And he said, taken in the common way, I long regretted bitterly and still regret that I had not given it to him by inoculation. So, of course, the English is very old, so it kind of sounds a little weird. Inoculation is vaccination. As kids, we have all got vaccines which keep us disease free. Who said this? Benjamin Franklin, one of the foremost scientists produced by United States of America in those times. So even a scientist of that, that kind of stature, was he could not protect his son because he did not use vaccination. Anyway, that's how the chapter starts. Now, the actual content of the chapter. Blood is so red. That color is so dominantly ingrained in our image. What is ingrained word? Ingrained means it is in our image of what blood is. Blood is so red. The color so dominantly ingrained in our image of what blood is. Means whenever we think blood, we think red. Red means blood. That's that he's just saying that the color red and blood, it's so closely associated that white blood cells were not even noticed. When you say blood, you think of red only. So white blood cells were not even noticed or discovered for centuries. In 1840s, a French pathologist in Paris, Gabriel Andral, okay, French name, Gabriel Andral, looked down on microscope and found found what two generations of microscopists had seemingly missed. Two generations of microscopists means microscope was discovered 2 generations back, like, and people used to look through the microscope and try to discover small things that you can't really see with the eye. Have you ever looked into a microscope? You should. And if your parents have enough budget for you, then ask them to give you an electronic microscope. In India it costs around 4 to 5,000, but the number of things that you can see and discover in your free time, that's much better than looking at a mobile screen. In Amazon, if you search, you'll be able to find a decent digital microscope with a big screen, in which you don't even have to peer down a small set of lenses, for around 5,000. So it's a good investment if parents are looking at this. Buy a microscope for your kids instead of buying any fancy toys like big Nerf gun or this or that, which they will just use and throw away. Okay, they found something which, okay, we're coming back to the topic. They found something that two generations of microscopists had missed. Yet another type of cell. That means they have found some other type of cells in the blood. All okay, cells and all will go later, but let's listen to the story. Unlike red blood cells, these cells lacked hemoglobin, possessed nuclei, and were irregularly shaped, occasionally with pseudopods. Pseudopods means finger-like extensions and projections. They were termed leukocytes or white blood cells. They were white, called white only because they were not red, because we can't really see many colors inside the microscope. So they were called white because they were not red. Okay, so all of this can be seen under a microscope. That is so interesting. In 1843, an English doctor named William Addison astutely proposed. Astutely means sharply, like in a very sharp, with a sharp intellect, maybe proposed that these white cells or colorless corpuscles. Corpuscles means like small. What do you say? Okay, fine. Leave that. For colorless corpuscles, as he called them, played like little things, played some crucial role in infection and inflammation. What did he say? What did William Addison say? That whenever you get infected, these things have something to do with it. Okay. Who said this? William Addison in 1843. Edison had been compiling autopsy reports. Autopsy is a procedure that is done when a person is dead, and that is to detect why he died, he or she died, what was the cause, etc. So they cut open the body, etc. Kind of gross reports. So Edison had been compiling autopsy reports of tubercules, white pus-filled nodules associated typically with tuberculosis, but also with some other infections. In one case report, he noted a fine young man, aged 20, reported that he had pain and cough in the side. Okay, pain and cough in the side somewhere. He had little cough which plagued him. He was always coughing. Soon the symptoms progressed to an obscure, deep-seated mucus rale. Even I don't know the meaning of this word. You can find out on Google. And on coughing, a very characteristic plash. So a lot of this English is kind of old also. The poor man, died 4 months later with all the attendant means associated, that is always attendant, like with clouds the attendant feature is rain, with heavy clouds attendant rain, like it will always be there with it. That's called attendant, with all the attendant symptoms of deep and rapid decline. When Dr. Addison examined his lungs at autopsy, he found them studded full of tubercules in considerable numbers. Placed between glass slides, the tubercules often crumbled and melted into globs, little globs. Under the microscope, the globs were made of pus, yuck. And here's the interesting part: thousands of white blood cells. He could see these white blood cells when they cut open the poor person's body and open the tubercules, like the part which was infected. Forget about tubercules, is that? But clearly, the part that was clearly infected, that was not looking right, around that they could find these white blood cells. And that is the interesting part, as if these cells had been recruited. Recruited means, sometimes recruited means you want to make a football team. Hey, come play football with us. You're recruiting people. Recruitment means even for companies also recruit people to do work for them. So recruitment means getting together for a particular purpose. That's recruitment. It's not only giving a job. Recruitment can be used in different senses also. Recruited especially to the inflamed sites. Inflamed means wherever that whole infection, this that is happening. Some of them are filled with granules. Granules, of course, Edison noted. Perhaps he reasoned they were delivering this granular cargo to the infected areas of the body. Okay, so these white blood cells were going to the infected areas, and some of them were filled with some granules. And what he's guessing, okay, the science is also a lot about guessing first, then making logical connections, and then finally proving that your guess is right. That is how the whatever you are reading in the textbook, that has come from somebody's guess. Multiple people guessed. So some of them had the capacity, or some of them went ahead and were able to prove that their guess was right. Many people verified them again and again and again over the years, and then first it comes into something called a scientific journal. There the whatever is whatever ideas are proposed, actually what you see in your science books, in your biology textbook, in your maths textbook, they were just a bunch of ideas. Okay, they were verified again and again and again until Now they have become facts. Okay, so the journey from ideas to actually becoming facts, it's a very long one. What you don't see in your textbook, like, you're just given, okay, this is the end result, you're just seeing the end result. There's a whole lot of mess and long stories behind all of what you're seeing in your textbook, and those stories are important. Those stories make it really interesting. Okay. Otherwise, if I just tell you fact 1, fact 2, fact 3, fact 4, you won't accept it. You won't even be able to understand it properly. You will just memorize it for exams and give it back, because you don't know how they have come. I mean, how people have discovered so many things. So this book kind of gives you a lot of the idea of how lot of facts related to the cells have been discovered. Okay. Okay. Now, again, next paragraph. What was the connection between the white blood cells and inflammation? In 1882, a wandering professor of zoology, Eli Mechinkov, kind of weird name, uh, quarreled with his colleagues at the University of Odessa. I believe Odessa is in Greece, if I'm not wrong. Okay, and huffed off to Messina, Sicily, again a city in Italy, where he set up a private laboratory. So he fought with his colleagues. This kind of disagreements happen with people who have strong opinions. Where he set up his own lab. He said, "Okay, I can't work with you. I'll go to Italy and I will set up my own lab." He was a temperamental man and had a depressive streak. He used to get depressed often. Happens often with very intelligent people. Okay. He would attempt suicide twice in his lifetime, often by swallowing a strain of pathogenic bacteria. So, even to commit suicide, he's using a very biologically scientific way, that is to swallow some infected bacteria which he might have isolated. You can't really have infected bacteria across the counter in a shop, right? So, he must have done something to get those pathogenic bacteria. He tried to swallow them twice to commit suicide, could not, often at odds with the orthodoxy of science. Okay, let's leave this. In Messina, where the warm, shallow, windy beaches yielded a constant wealth of marine animals. So here in Messina, where he went, there were a lot of marine animals. Mechinkov began to experiment with starfish. So he got starfish as his experimental subject. Alone, he was alone one evening. His wife and children had gone to watch apes at a local circus. So even in those days, we had 1882, that is more than 120 years, 130, almost 150 years back. Okay. uh, there was a circus. His wife and children had gone to watch monkeys perform in a circus. Mechinkov was alone and he was experimenting with his starfish. Mechinkov began to devise an experiment that would define his career, define his entire career, and change our understanding of immunity. Okay, now immunity is a very common word, right? You must have heard it hundreds of times. Sometimes teacher will say you have weak immunity. Sometimes your father or mother will say, I want you to boost your immunity, so you should have more vegetables, you should have eggs. So immunity is a very common word. I'm sure you must have heard of it. The starfish was semi-transparent. Okay, he had been okay. Now, why is he talking about starfish? Somewhere you have to understand, okay, that you will understand later, that all of life is connected. Okay, things that happen in monkeys that are very similar to what happen in human beings. Actually, there is very little difference at the level of biology. Humans and monkeys differ very little. Okay, very very little difference actually, but that very little difference itself is enough to create the vast ocean of difference between us and them. Of course, we have to accept that human beings are ruling the earth, planet earth, whereas every other animal is kind of getting dominated. But all are related. Even the starfish, the way its body functions has a lot of correlation with all the living beings. That's why studying the starfish somewhere helps us understanding our own human body as well. Starfish was semi transparent. He had been okay. What is starfish? Those, you can Google it. So starfish is like, it has those five tentacles, like not octopus, but it looks like a star, literally like a star. The starfish was semi transparent. He had been watching the cells move about in the bodies. Okay, so you could actually see the cells inside the starfish. So that is another interesting thing. He was particularly interested in the movement of the starfish of the cells after injury. What happens when the starfish gets hurt? What happens to the cells moving around in the starfish, which he could see? What if what if he stuck a thorn in one of the starfish's feet? Cruel, but sometimes necessary for the work of science. He spent a sleepless night and returned to the experiment the next morning. What did he do? He stuck a thorn in the foot of the starfish. Then he spent a sleepless. He could not sleep in the night and returned to the experiment the next morning. A group of motile cells. Motiles mean cells which can move. A thick cushion layer had accumulated busily around the thorn. Interesting. A lot of mobile cells had accumulated around the thorn. He had, in essence, observed the first steps in inflammation. Okay, next time you go to a doctor with a wound, sometimes I hope you never get hurt, but sometimes if you do get hurt and you have to go to the doctor for dressing, ask him or her what is inflammation. Observe the first steps in inflammation and immune response. The recruitment or calling, come, 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 of immune cells to the site of injury. So the starfish got hurt by a thorn, and these little cells, the cells that give us immunity. What is this chapter that we are talking about? We are all talking about immunity only. We have not deviated from the subject. So this is all about immunity. How our immune cells work, how when we get an infection, how we get better, how coronavirus is defeated by our immunity. So immunity is without our immunity, we will be literally will not be able to survive, because there are so many microorganisms which are more than happy to take eat us up, okay, in small ways. But that small eating is also very big, because imagine some microbe eating away a small heart valve, okay. Your heart will not pump, you're gone. And these microbes can, in when they go inside the body, they can multiply in very fast and in very high numbers. So the microbe you can't even see, right? But when they go into the body, they literally make a colony. So like, they'll keep reproducing very fast, and they'll make a colony, and inside your body something very wrong will happen. Okay, so what noted was these immune cells move towards the site of inflammation autonomously, as if compelled or impelled, as if being called by a force or attractant. Like, here is an injury, come here. How that is happening, that is a mystery. That's really a mystery. Later, these attractants would be identified as specific proteins. Okay, so some kind of protein is actually attracting these immune cells towards themselves. The accumulation of mobile cells around the foreign body is done without any help from blood vessels or the nervous system. So, directly, wherever the injury happens, some kind of proteins get released, or some magically, and sensing these proteins are the immune cells of the starfish are getting called to the site of the injury. Okay, the accumulation of mobile. Okay, no, 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 okay. The accumulation of mobile cells around the foreign body is done without any help from blood or nervous system. He wrote, for the simple reason that these animals do not have either one or the other, because the starfish does not have blood, neither does it have a nervous system. So the only way the cells could get attracted to the site of attack. Okay, let's go back to the subject. We are talking about immunity, how immune cells work inside the body. What this Mechinkov, professor or Dr. Mechinkov is trying to do is find out how these immune cells work. This is the first step. These are the first steps in the discovery of understanding of immune system, how the immune system works in animals. First, we'll understand it in animals, simple animals, through which we can see. Starfish is transparent, so we can see through it, actually see through it. So we can actually see things happening live, in live action. We don't have to kill the starfish to see what is happening, or cut it apart to see what is happening, because once you cut it apart, you've already, the things, whatever you want to observe will no longer happen the way you want, in the natural way, right? So starfish, that's why I can understand now that it is a uh, very good animal to start studying about the internal processes of biology. Okay. Anyway, coming back, for the simple reason that yeah, over the next few years. Okay, so now the starfish episode is over. Over the next few years, Mechinkov took the seed of this idea, the main idea, that immune cells are being called to the site of inflammatory site, means where there is attack happening to the body, and conducted a series of experiments. He took this idea that wherever there is an attack in the body, these immune cells are getting called. This is the basic idea. Now he's working on this idea. He extended his observation to other organisms and to other forms of injury. He introduced the infectious spores that penetrated the guts of Daphnia. Now, I have no idea what Daphnia is. Tiny crustaceans, even I don't even know what is a crustacean, commonly referred to as water fleas. Okay, so must be some kind of water animal. The immune cells he found did not merely travel to the site of inflammation, they tried to ingest or eat the infectious agents or the irritant that had accumulated at the site. That means this Daphnia inside the gut, I mean, it has a gut, means like our own gut, like a stomach. Wherever the gut got infected, these he was able to observe. Now, how he was able to observe, again, we don't know. So again, there is some kind of a black box, but at least this whole thing is going around like a story. Okay, that is, I hope that is interesting to you. So even this story has some gaps, but at least it is a story. At least it's not just facts bombarded onto you, right? So he was able to observe that these immune cells were trying to eat the infectious agent. So wherever there was an infection, wherever some outside cells from outside the body of the daphnia were trying to attack the gut, these immune cells were trying to eat the infectious agent. Okay, he called this phenomenon phagocytosis. Now, this term you will definitely hear in your biology textbooks between 8th and ninth standard in India. The engulfment and consumption of an infectious agent by an immune cell. In a series of papers published in the mid 1880s that would eventually win him the Nobel Prize, Mechinkov used the German word Kampf, meaning fight. Fight. Kampf means what? Fight or tussle, to encapsulate the relationship between an organism and its invaders. He described a drama. Now, this is an interesting thing. He described a drama unfolding within organisms that was like a perpetual struggle. Like, it was like a battleground between, like, so many battles have happened in India between Mughals and British and this and that. तनु ये सब ये आने वाला है.
चलो चलो अनायरा का लेना है.
अरे ये आने वाला है.